All right, welcome back to the channel. Big Dog Brett. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. Now is your opportunity to go ahead and hit subscribe. I'm going to ask again later on when we get to the end of the video. Today we're going to be talking about Stetson Bennett, how he compares to the field of quarterbacks now, the field of quarterbacks in the SEC, and the field of quarterbacks in pretty much all of college football history, and we'll see how he stacks up. See you guys right after this. Okay, guys, so let me go ahead and pull up some notes here. It's quite a bit of stuff I want to get into. Before we kind of get started, though, I do want to address that for some reason, there is still a lot of people out there that feel like Stetson Bennett shouldn't be the starting quarterback. Keep in mind, this is from the point of view, from my point of view, looking at this season moving forward, how does Georgia really stack up with Stetson Bennett as quarterback? Now, I'm not going to get into the whole conversation on this particular video about the players we lost, the players that we had, the players that we're going to step up, this, that, and the other. There'll be a little bit of talk about some of the players that he utilized last year, but we're primarily going to talk about Stetson Bennett, the amount of hate this young man is getting for whatever reason. And to me, it just kind of blows me away. So I went back and I really started digging into the whole Stetson Bennett thing and how does Stetson Bennett compare to quarterbacks? How does Stetson Bennett compare to who he was just a few seasons ago? And how did he get to be where he is now? Stetson Bennett is kind of a Cinderella story. He's played second string, third string, fourth string, fiddle behind whichever quarterback Georgia had at the time. But he has continued to improve over the years. He's always kind of been there waiting in the wings, and he has certainly earned his spot. Now, that having been said, I myself included was pretty harsh on Stetson Bennett. A lot of people were. They didn't think Stetson Bennett really had the arm talent that he needed to get the job done. So, one of the scouting reports said he had average arm strength. If you take a minute, go back and watch some of his YouTube highlight videos out there of how strong of an arm he actually does have. There's one particular pass in the national championship game where Stetson Bennett throws this bomb to George Pickens. You can make the argument that George Pickens laid out beautifully for that. You could also make a argument that George Pickens probably could have caught that ball in stride. I'm not going to get into it either way, but the pass was on point. And so Stetson Bennett standing at roughly the 15 to 18 yard line on their side of the field. And when the ball is caught, it's caught roughly at the 30 yard line on the other side of the field. So a little bit of quick math, that's 35 from the 15 to the 50. And then it's another 20 to 15 from there. So that's a 50, 60 yard pass. That's not average arm strength. Not a lot of guys, you can make that quarterback, not a lot of backup quarterbacks can throw a ball 50, 60 yards consistently and hit their target in stride. So I decided to look into it even more, and I'm here to kind of help set the record straight. The point of this video is to try and help the average Georgia fan understand how good Stetson Bennett is. Not from my opinion standpoint, but from a statistical standpoint. All of these stats are easily pulled. You can go look them up. It's not hard to do. So first thing I want to do is I want to go back and look at Stetson Bennett's numbers as a whole, all of last season. So Stetson Bennett threw for 2,862 yards. He had 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a QBR rating of 86.7. And you may look at me and say, Big Dog, that's not that great of a performance, really. I mean, not even 3,000 yards. Well, okay, fair enough. I agree that that's not a, mind-boggling performance, but let's also keep a couple of things in mind. He did not play in the Clemson game. JT Daniels did. And he really didn't play in the South Carolina game. So in the Clemson game, he had 0 yards because he didn't play. In the South Carolina game, he had a total of 4 yards. In the Arkansas game, he had a total of 72 yards. Over a third of that came off of one pass. So, taking into consideration that basically there's 3 games there where he was basically not even a statistical number. If you say that he averages, let's just say 230 yards a game, you add those 3 together, you're right at another 700 yards. That's 3,500 yards in the season. That's pretty solid. Now, people are going to jump up and down and say, yeah, but this, that, and the other. Look, he threw 1 pass in the South Carolina game. He threw 7 passes in the Arkansas game. We just didn't need to. Georgia ran the ball down Arkansas's throat, and there was nothing Arkansas can do about it. Georgia rushed for over 300 yards in that game. I mean, absolutely destroyed Arkansas. Excuse me. I think Georgia was like 275 yards or something like it. Some ridiculous number. A lot of yards. But my point is that Stetson Bennett wasn't needed in that game, but had he have been needed in that game, and even if he would have performed at his average standard, he would have done extremely well. So looking at these stats, looking at his overall numbers and not taking into consideration what could have happened had he have played every game full blown, who knows? Who knows? So those numbers are a little bit deceiving, but here's what's not deceiving. So if you go in and you look at quarterbacks, total QBR of all time, I'm going to scroll down here the list. Now, this is all time. Now, keep in mind, there's people on this list like Tim Tebow, Marcus Mariota, if you know who that is. Trevor Lawrence is on this list, Aaron Murray, and most of these guys are on here 2 and 3 times. Like I think Cam Newton's on here a couple of times, Johnny Manziel's on here a couple of times, Marcus Mariota's on here 3 or 4 times, Justin Fields is on here 2 or 3 times, Tua is on here at least twice. So a lot of these markers are double, triple stats. So there's not this many people ahead of him. In the top 50 highest QBR ratings of all time best seasons, he's 41st. And if you take into consideration all of the people that's on here 2 and 3 and 4 times, like Bryce Young, Colt McCoy, Johnny Manziel, he really kind of pushes up into the top 25 quarterbacks of all time. Now, I know, hey, I get it. How can Stetson Bennett be in the top 25 of all time? Well, it's his QBR rating. It's 86.7. He's actually, ready for this? Brace yourself. He was better than one of the seasons Deshaun Watson had, Johnny Manziel had, Dak Prescott, and Tim Tebow. So we, for some reason, as Georgia fans, want to hate on Stetson Bennett, but we're really not paying attention to the things we should pay attention to. Now, that's all conferences, all time. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to jump you to the SEC. Now, last year, he came in number 3. Stetson Bennett had the 3rd highest QBR of all quarterbacks in the nation. Bryce Young was ahead of him by 1 place. And I forget the other guy's name. It's OSU. So I'm just telling you right now, if you really go down the list here and you look at the best of all time, Stetson Bennett is number 14 in the SEC, best of all time. That's ahead of Jake Fromm. That's ahead of every season Jake Fromm had. That's ahead of Jalen Hurts. If you don't know who Jalen Hurts is, you haven't been paying attention. Of course, Dak Prescott already mentioned that. Ready for this? He's better than the 2018 Joe Burrow at LSU. All these numbers, you can pull them over there at now, he wasn't better than the 2019, but he was better than the 2018. So you can go pull those numbers. But here's what I'm saying. When you have, and by the way, he was better than Tim Tebow every year Tim Tebow was at Florida. Unless I missed something here. Yeah. Stetson Bennett comes in at number 14. And if you look at how closely his numbers were, his overall numbers, like his QBR rating between Stetson Bennett and Bryce Young last year, Stetson Bennett was 86.7. Bryce Young, 87.6. Less than a full point difference between the two. Less than a full point difference. So, it's, and you can make arguments for the pass versus the run, the average. Stetson Bennett was about equal with Bryce Young, even though it looked like it was more. He took less sack yards, had less penalties than some quarterbacks, but Bryce Young had less than him. At the end of the day, if you can compete in this arena, if you can be up here with the Bryce Youngs, the Chad Kellys, the Johnny Manziels, the Tim Tebows, the Aaron Murrays, the Tua Tagovailoas, the Joe Burrows, the Cam Newtons, if you can be in that arena, just in that arena, my goodness, you got to say this guy is absolutely outstanding. And for people to say that somebody should replace him, they haven't looked at these numbers at all. And these numbers, I guarantee you, are the numbers that the coaches are looking at. So when you look down the pipe and you see Stetson Bennett, and you're like, oh, Stetson Bennett. Man, you better stand up and be excited that Georgia has a top-tier quarterback in Stetson Bennett. We've just misjudged this man for a long time, this young man for a long time, and now it's showing out. Now, keep in mind, let's see here. Yeah. So you've got Tua Tagovailoa. There's three quarterbacks. Four quarterbacks from Alabama that's ahead of him. And Georgia just beat Alabama. So this is telling you that Georgia is performing at that rate. Now you may say, oh, the reason he did so well is because of the people he was throwing to. I would say maybe I would agree with that more if George Pickens had played full time, or if two of the guys he was throwing to weren't flat out brand new freshmen. Now, granted, those guys are talented, but he's able to put the ball in places where our guys can get it and the other guy can't. So no matter how you slice it, whether it's a true freshman putting his hands around the ball or whether it's a super senior putting his hands around the ball, you have to say that he can still put it there. So for me, watching Stetson Bennett get out there and absolutely get after it like he does, insane. And Georgia should not be hating on Stetson Bennett. Even in the game that we lost to Alabama in the 41-24 game, 340 yards in passing. He went 28 for 49, which is a lot, but he still got a lot of yards. His completion percentage was 60%, granted. But, I mean, his QBR in that game was still right at 78. Look at how he body bagged Michigan. His QBR was 95.9. His QBR against Georgia Tech was 97.2, but, is what it is. QBR against UAB was 100. You say, oh, but it's UAB. Yeah, but he still put up 100. That's incredible. At the end of the day, hating on Stetson Bennett doesn't make any sense just because we haven't taken the time to go look at the numbers. He's the 14th greatest, and which one of those is actually a double because Tua is in there twice. So you would say that he's the 13th? Yeah, 13th. And you guys want to bench this guy. Wow. Just wow. So leave your thoughts down below. What do you think of Stetson Bennett? Do you think he's going to be, everything that I'm pumping him up to be? Do you think he's going to take a step back? Do you think he's going to lose his job halfway through the season? Keep in mind, Stetson Bennett is also the only quarterback in college football playing this year that has a national championship trophy in his pocket. So think about that. All right, guys. Well, I greatly appreciate you guys being on here. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. You can hit the thanks button. Tell me what you think of the new mic. Got a new microphone. Hopefully it sounds good. Hope you guys like it. Got a lot more coming up. Going to be doing a live show later tonight, hopefully with a special guest. We'll see how that pans out. But really appreciate you guys being on here. Oh, yeah. Don't forget. Have a great day. God bless. Go Dogs.